Hello there and welcome, Virtual Space Hero community. A warm welcome from a pretty hot Spain today. So I hope you're all doing fine. It is a tremendous pleasure hosting again my weekly Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn live show today. And we continue talking about hybrid teams. You know that our focus is on virtual learning, virtual teams, and virtual events. And for the past month, we have been talking extensively with experts from across the globe about hybrid teams. And today, we are going to talk about how to create an extraordinary environment for your hybrid teams. And we're not only going to talk about how to create that sense of team belonging, trust in your virtual team, but we are digging deep into the topic of spaces. And I'm super happy to welcome on the Virtual Space Hero stage with me on my show, Chris Stone, connecting from the United Kingdom, the Virtual Agile Coach. And here we go. Hi, Chris.
Well, hello there, Barbara. Thanks for having me today.
Hello there. Thank you so much for making space in your calendar. And also, I heard a pretty warm Britain, right, for this afternoon.
It's rather warm. It's about 20 degrees, which for me in particular is quite warm. It's hotter than we usually get.
Thank you so much, Chris. I've been following you for quite some time on LinkedIn, and I've seen all those posts popping up, always about virtually and agile. And also, that's what your podcast is called, Virtually Agile. Let us know a little bit about how did you enter the field? As was it agile or was it a virtual?
So it definitely began as project management, actually, back when I started my career post-university, working in a graduate scheme for a large consultancy, and it was all project management heavy. And then it transitioned into agile. And then it was actually only about a year and a half ago now where I was doing some reflection. Obviously, COVID struck and everyone was forced to transition to remote and hybrid working. And I thought long and hard, and I remembered hearing for years that co-located teams is the way we should be aspiring towards. It's how teams best work. And as I thought back on my working career, I realized most of the time, the very vast majority of the time, I'd never had that. I'd always had some element of distributed working, a developer based offshore or a third party based elsewhere. And that went back several years. And I thought, well, actually, I've been doing this virtual agile for a long time. So I had lots of things that I could share with people from my experiences. So it
Oh,
began in project
fantastic.
management, transitioned to agile, and was largely virtual quite a lot of that time.
Okay, interesting because I was talking also past year already with Malut Sakarelli from Remote Forever, and she was one of the persons who started the discussion about remote and agile, sort of to bring it together, because agile was very much about co-location, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yeah. So I know Malud. She and I were going to create a podcast together at some point, but that hasn't quite lended itself to happening. But I've loved what she's been doing with regards to the Remote Forever Summit and pioneering remote working within Agile. I spoke at one of her events, World Retrospective Day. Did one of my talks about retrospectives back in March time, I believe. So yeah, I like what she's doing there, and I intend to help where I can with regards to pushing the focus on the fact that agile can be done regardless of where you're located.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, there was one thing, one post when I was scrolling through my newsfeed that caught my attention, and it was you speaking about a virtual office and virtual town hall. So,
Mm.
when you work with teams and when you work with co-located or distributed teams, why do you think is a virtual office space important for hybrid teams? What is the reason?
So I think a virtual office space can be very useful whether you're hybrids or entirely remote or maybe have quite a large presence uh, in person based in the office. I think it's that place where anyone can navigate to very quickly and just see important information, share transparently, know where to go to find something out. Particularly important, I have found, sorry, since the pandemic has forced everyone to embrace hybrid working practices. If we think back in the past, you might have had a physical town hall where everyone's kind of crowded into some sort of auditorium or large room, and you've got a couple of speakers at the front. And when the pandemic struck, we couldn't have that anymore, and people began trying to replicate those experiences virtually. And my experience of participating in some of those, where they almost seemed to just try and shift directly what they were doing physically into a virtual world, without perhaps embracing some of the additional benefits you might gain from doing so virtually. As an example, you can very quickly, through the use of tools such as Miro or Menti or otherwise, enable this crowdsourced, perspective gaining from everyone, and get people's thoughts and perspective and views on how we should approach something. You build interactivity into it a bit more, rather than just being people being spoken at and maybe some Q&A at the end. So I think having a virtual space that leverages some of the capabilities we gain from being virtual can enable great things to happen. And I have found that by using a bit of creativity in particular, you help create an environment where people are engaged, connected, they enjoy the experience, they feel part of something more than just being spoken at or having the latest near sight vision spouted at them.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about, let's start with the virtual town hall then. If you think about the virtual town halls, and I think you also created a template for that. What is it that you would suggest if people, for example, use it's a Miro template, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. So there is it's more of a virtual office template, but it can be leveraged for a town hall. So it's basically a template that enables anyone to just build their own virtual office using a selection of different office furnitures and things like that, just to create something that matches their company. And I've shown an example of how I've done it or how it could be used for reference as well. So you can take a little bit of inspiration from that. But mine, for example, when I built it for the company I'm currently working for, it had like a slide going between floors and a ladder. It had some rooms that were just for games. There was rooms for engagement and interaction. There was like a notice board section where anyone can post things. There are posters on the wall representing some of the company's values and reminding those. There's a lot you can do with it because everyone's not face to face anymore, and it can help simulate some of those, I guess, water cooler chats that we may not be able to have right now. So you can go on there, for example, and there's a whiteboard that says just share a latest TV show that you're a fan of. I think you're sharing it now.
Okay.
You can see that there's like in the top left hand corner, there's a notice board section. In the right hand side, you've got kind of screens that will show things like any top template you found, any movie you recommend, any music you'd like to share about, any funny things. There's lots of things you can do with these templates. I think that example there is showing I think metrics that matter or something like that. So important metrics you might want to track. But all of this is just basically me pulling together an equivalent virtual office and then allowing people to navigate around that and do as they wish. On mine, there's a wall of pets, for example, where people can share images of their pets and what their names are. There is games templates. There's a GIF and funny memes section. And this was building on the work I'd seen from some other people out there in my network within LinkedIn. There's someone particularly active within the mural world, Benjamin, who's often sharing his ideas and tricks for creating virtual experiences. You can see a poster there, users don't read, just a reminder. Yarn 2 from a UX perspective, users don't read, so pay attention to that. There's just a lot you can do with these virtual templates. And what I love about Miro in particular and Mural is you can create this, share it, and within a few clicks of a button, someone else can be using it as well. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can start with an idea that someone else created and make it their own, customize it with perhaps, as I said, company values. They can customize it with particular images that they like.
Different furniture, what I see
Different
here,
furniture.
right?
You can put whatever you like here. These are just some examples that I put in. You might have someone who just wants to have their office full of slides. Who knows?
With many cats or with many dogs, for example. So there you have it.
Yeah. And what I also like, there was a way of creating a bit of identity. So in my template version, I've got a whole floor that's dedicated. It's almost like a locker room. And you basically put a locker room per team. And in that, you can start to personalize the teams. They've got a micro culture, that team. Some of them really love video games. Some of them really like brands of music. So you can see this left-hand one here. They have a bit of a Star Wars theme. This was a team that I was working with. They like Star Wars. And on that locker, they can share a few things about what they're about, pictures of themselves, some things they like, areas of focus for the next few months, for example. It was a great way of sharing a team's identity with everyone else, even though we're not face to face, and you can't learn some of those things. You might not have learned about one another unless you'd made time for it.
Lovely, really, really nice. So I'm just wondering, this is sort of a fantastic template that we can find on Miroverse or on your webpage here, also referring to the virtualagilecoach.co.uk.
Correct. It's not quite. That one's not on the Miroverse yet. It's not on the Miroverse yet. That one is on my website, though. I do plan to upload it to the Miroverse.
Oh, fantastic. Great. So virtualagilecoach.co.uk is the place to go to see that template. Let me just ask you one question. So if I, as an organization, use this template, I know I'm familiar with virtual offices such as Miro or Hopin, where you really sort of go there, and also the video conferencing pops up where you sort of meet with a colleague who is in that particular room. How would that work, or how would you make that work in this template here?
So I don't think you that's probably some deeper functionality that wouldn't be capable through Miro. This is more of an asynchronous virtual office that enables people to interact without being there face to face. I've used this virtual office as part of town hall sessions as well. So in what I tend to do, if I was using this for a town hall, I'd begin by navigating everyone to the top left-hand corner where you've got a notice board, and there I might share, myself alongside the other members of the leadership team would be sharing things about joiners and leavers, welcoming new people, as well as saying farewell to some people that might be leaving the company, kind of some key updates and announcements. I always do an interesting check-in, and this is one of the things I love about Miro, a great check-in exercise that I always aim for it to be different every time. So as an example, on this whiteboard, I would have a scale, like how are you feeling today, on a scale of Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker before he's joined the dark side, and then all the way to Darth Vader. And you get people to rate how they're feeling on this scale using lightsabers, right? You get people to rate how they're feeling on a scale of this, various images of bad taxidermied animals. So you've got that fox looking a bit unnervous, you've got this polar bear looking angry, and you just get people to move little emojis to demonstrate how they're feeling on that day. There's just interesting ways you can build in interactivity and a bit of fun. And then, so we've had a bit of a check-in. We've had some announcements about joiners and leavers. We've had some key topics. It might be the vision for the next 3 months, just to align everyone around that. And then I would move everyone across to a crowdsource activity where I'd say, okay, we've got this problem to solve. Does anyone have any ideas about it? And you just get people to gauge what their thoughts are and crowdsource and get people to share what they're feeling about it. And you can then bounce in and out of a deep focus topic on an important matter, like audit, for example, but then also into an interactive session that gets everyone using things and being participative. But then I find help keep people engaged, because we know it can be very easy to be distracted by the latest Slack message or email, particularly when it's a town hall or a virtual session. By keeping people engaged and feeling part of it, they're more likely to remain present.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. So this board that we have seen can be an asynchronous virtual office where you can sort of leave your comments, create a sense of team belonging. It can be also used for a synchronous town hall. Just to repeat that again, a synchronous town hall in the sense of if you have like weather mood boards or interaction elements in the same board embedded, correct?
Absolutely. You could use this asynchronously just to allow people to share things or pin things to the board on certain sections, however they should so wish. But you can also use it for a synchronous town hall where you've got people from offices all over the globe coming together to learn, share, discuss things.
Fantastic. And I'm just thinking, last year we had a very big conference with 600 students, and we were using a Miroverse template for asynchronous and synchronous interactions. And what we did was a fantastic template from HUED, and they designed that was used for the Miro big conference last year.
I remember that.
We used a similar template. Exactly.
Yeah. I've used that exact template for a town hall. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it fits perfectly because, well, my company is a virtual space hero. I was producing the event for the Global Case Study Challenge. And so also like it fit like into my branding perfectly. I was so thankful to who it. And I had also support from Joshua Davies and Isman Tanuri, who were helping me a little bit with the brainstorming on how to best onboard participants to the board. And what we did, for example, I'm just thinking and wondering if it would also work for your virtual office. We were having Zoom icons embedded in the different spaceships, and the different spaceships were different subtracks of the conference. So that's how I was using that.
You can absolutely do that. Yeah, you can link out via Miro, the board in Miro, in certain sections to, yeah, as you said, Zoom breakout rooms or Teams chats and things like that. There's definitely ways you can create that sort of breakout room, focus community build.
Fantastic. And I'm just popping in here. One of the comments, Benjamin is saying, this does, when we were looking over your Miro template, Benjamin was saying, this does feel like a Microsoft Bob, but I like the sentiment. I do use Trello boards for similar purposes. That's really fantastic. Benjamin, maybe you could give us some more insights on how you use a Trello board, or also if there is a template that you created, just put in the link into the conversation thread here in the chat so that we have it and can also publish it and look at it.
I'm actually not familiar with
Fantastic. Thank you
Microsoft
so
Bob, so I'm
much.
gonna have to do a bit of research about that after this.
Oh yeah. I've seen on Trello. I've seen several wonderful different uses of Trello, and we're also working with Trello as a team in a project management way, of course. And I've seen several uses of Trello, how to use it in a team building activity, how to use it, for example, also for sort of fun stuff that you can do with your team. It was really interesting to see that. Cool. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the other things that I love using virtual whiteboards for is exactly that, fun, games, right? So I often will teach agile concepts using gamification. And the way I might do that, I'll give you an example. If we were all face to face, I might teach a team about the concept of technical debt. And the way I would do it is I would get them to be running post-it notes from one side of the room to the other, moving them between two whiteboards. And that would represent them moving something through the workflow. So a developer would pick something up from from one board, move it across the other side of the room and put it on the other board. A tester would then pick it up and move it back, right? And that would represent something completing its way through the workflow. But then I would then begin to introduce chairs in their path, and the chairs would represent technical debt, things that slow them down if they don't deal with them. And in the first round, yeah, there's a few chairs, it slows things down, then there's more, and it gets to the point where there's so many chairs that they can't proceed any further. And I said, right, this is what happens when we allow technical debt to build up so much that it slows development down. The code base has become too convoluted. It might have been splintered so many times. Every time we try and develop something going forward, it's going to be that much more difficult. And then I try to encourage them to remove one chair every time they deliver one thing through the workflow. So they begin to incrementally deal with technical debt. Now you can achieve the same thing via whiteboards. You can create a whiteboard space where people are moving post-it notes back and forth, but this time to represent the technical debt, you have a maze, and they have to move these post-it notes through the maze. And each maze gets more complex, represents the technical debt growing. So it's just a great light bulb moment style game you can play with people to help them understand what happens when we don't think of or deal with technical debt. I think we may have lost Barbara for a moment. So I was just talking about agile games. One of my favorite topics. I run a meetup every few weeks to a month, introducing agile games, various different ones. It's called the Agile Arcade, and it largely leverages Miro. Anyone can come along. I will send the link and details about this later. But essentially, people come to the arcade, and I empower them to choose which game they would most like to play. And they spend their virtual coins as if they're in an arcade. And the game with the most chosen or the most votes, but most coins spent on it, is the games that we collectively play. And there's been lots of played over the time since I've done this. There's games around Kneffin, there's games around virtual names and context switching, games around feedback loops, lots of games I find.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm back. I'm sorry, Chris.
That's
I
okay.
think it's too hot in Spain and summertime doesn't want me to work. So August.
No problem.
uh, The question, I'm not sure if you heard that, about agile as an opportunity for hybrid.
I didn't hear the question. No, you disappeared for a moment. So, agile as an opportunity for hybrid. Again, I would come back to, I think agile it would span any team, right? There are benefits in using agile principles, whether you are hybrid, remote, or otherwise. You don't even have to be a software team. The principles, of the Agile Manifesto, and I know they were written with the software in mind, they can be very much applied to anything, really. The concept essentially is just learn often, regularly inspect and adapt, break things down into smaller pieces, and go from there. There's no reason you can't apply that same approach to many things. Example, I could be choosing. My goal is to lose weight. I want to lose 10 pounds. How will I achieve this? I'll break this down into smaller pieces. I'll go for walks more. So I'll try and get 10K steps a day in. I will work out 3 or 4 times a week. I will plan what meals I eat and track how much I'm eating. So I've broken that thing down to smaller pieces. And then what I'm going to do is on a weekly basis, I'm going to weigh myself and I'm going to see what the results are. And I might measure myself as well to see what the results are. So I'll note that down. And then based on what I've discovered in that week's time frame, I will change my approach accordingly. Am I moving in the right direction? Okay, great. I'll keep doing that. I might amplify what I'm doing, maybe do more of it. Is it not going to plan? Okay, what can I try differently? What experiments can I try next? For hybrid teams, the same principles apply. You are working together collectively to achieve a goal as a team. You are looking to learn frequently. And one of my values as the virtual agile coach is learn fast, learn often. I don't tend to use fail fast, which is more of a common one. And the reason for that is I have learned people don't like to fail, and particularly certain demographics. Failure is still this stigmatized thing, even within the agile community, I will note, because I'm always trying to encourage people to share their failures more, their war stories. And even fellow agile coaches are sometimes reluctant to admit failure. So
Yeah.
I tend to say, learn fast, learn often. And agile builds that feedback loop in, that opportunity to learn fast and often, because you are doing
Yeah.
smaller chunks, learning quicker.
I really like that because I need to think about that because I'm doing a lot of error culture trainings for organizations because also new ways of working that I was a researcher in.
Mhm.
For me, is it error and learning from errors is something, and learning fast from errors is something super important. That's also I think that's a great input and very important concept here as well. If you think about what you were saying, or if you consider what you were saying, like these small chunks. So how do retrospectives play in there? Retrospectives as daily, weekly meetings, or how would you define them?
So for me, a retrospective is any opportunity the team is taking to identify what they could do differently. What experiment they could try next. What have they learned, and what they could try next. Traditionally, the cadence will usually be one retrospective per 2 weeks, for example, per iteration length. But it's always contextual. It depends on the team in mind. You might have a team that has a smaller team. They don't have as many people. They might not be churning through as much work, or they might have certain things that limit them from doing things, and therefore it makes sense for them to retro every 3 weeks. You might have a team that's learning very, very rapidly, and they might want to build in an element of retrospection into every stand-up, for example. They might say at the end of every session, what new things could we try today? And that might work for them. They might be in a very mature place where they can do it at that level. But traditionally, I find it's a 2 week sort of cadence works well. And to me, I try and shorten the rec show and have it like a 45 minutes to an hour where the team just reflects on how things have gone recently, or where they would like to be, or a mixture of both. And the way I tend to do these is I tend to create these immersive themed retrospectives because, and the reason for this is that when I when I've been facilitating retros in the past, and I thought, oh, I want to do a retro, the options were limited. It was what are we going to start, stop, continue? What are we sad, mad, glad about? What are the 4 Ls? And there might have been a sailboat and a hot air balloon in there somewhere as well. The options were a bit limited, and it meant that the ceremonies themselves, the retros, were people were less interested in them. They might be switching off a bit, or worse still, because it was the same things being asked every time, the same responses were coming up. So I thought we can be better here. I can be better here. I'm going to create new ones. So I began creating new retrospective themes, whether it was Queen the rock band and rather than asking what you're sad, mad, glad about, you use the Queen discography and you can play the music in the background with the team whilst they're thinking. And you could be saying, hey, don't stop me now. What's going really well that we should keep doing? Or we are the champions. What do we want to celebrate from the recent iteration? Who's doing great work? Yeah, you can use the Queen songs to prompt questions differently. Same goes for Friends, the TV show. Everyone loves Friends, the TV show. So you could just ask, use some of the famous quotes from the show. How are you doing? Joey. Everyone knows Joey. How are you doing? Just ask generally. How are you doing as a team? What's on your minds? Or you say, there's something wrong with the left phalange from Phoebe, and then you talk about what's gone wrong in the last iteration. Just random things like that. And I've found that the consequence of creating these themed retros, especially if you empower the team to choose the next theme and you do so together, is that people look forward to a retrospective. They want to be part of them. They're excited. And the fact that you're asking the questions in slightly different ways means that you get very different responses sometimes.
I love that. And it's not only because I do love Queen, so you really got me there, but also because the good thing is now everybody must be super like, dear God, how do I come up with all those different themed retros? And the good news now is everybody who's listening, first of all, connect with Chris also here on LinkedIn. He's tagged into this post, but also check out the Virtual Agile Coach, his webpage, because many of those templates can be seen there and are on the Miroverse or downloadable from his webpage. So this is like the amazing news here, right?
Absolutely, they are all entirely free. I don't. They're not behind a paywall. You're not required to subscribe or sign up or anything. If you want to do so, fine. But they're all freely available. And what I like about this again is that it's reduced some of the, I guess that the admin time or the preparation time for me as a facilitator. When I'm facilitating a retro nowadays, my options are: can I create something new? Or can I just borrow something that someone else has already created? I could jump on the Miroverse and see some of the great templates that others have shared. I think what I've loved seeing is that I started creating these themed retros, and there are some other people that have started doing the same. And now there's kind of a small community of people sharing themed retrospectives and embracing fun in the workplace. There are so many positive messages I get back from people excited about the consequences of these themed retros. People saying they were engaged and they enjoyed it. That even the most stern and hard-faced of people had smiled because they took part in it, and it was something that they enjoyed. And these stories are some of the reasons I keep doing what I'm doing.
Fantastic, yes. And also, what I love, and also for all of you out there, definitely check out the Miroverse, or I don't know what the corresponding webpage is called for Miro. Maybe you know that, because I know that, Chris, your templates are also, most of them, all available on Miro and Miro, correct?
Yeah, there are. So there are on Mural. I don't know if there's an equivalent Miroverse single location, or if they have, it hasn't quite got the same catchy name. For me, you can create like a room that people can come and access, and that's what I've done. Is I've just created a room where I put all my templates and say they're available, and people tend to just jump on those, and they might see one like, oh, the Legend of Zelda will do that one, or Euro 2021, or Pride, or however many, whichever one they fancy. And this is what's great. You can just, if you want to, with a team on any given day, you can just load it up and say, which one do you want to do today, guys? Grab one, a few clicks of a button, and it's there. Plug and play, off you go.
Fantastic, really, really great, great stuff. So when we think about retrospective, so we do know that there are a lot of templates out there. You shared with us the key principles. If there is somebody out there now and who would like to organize a retrospective, like the first retrospective next week with his or her team, what would you suggest in terms of preparation and facilitation and follow up, like those 3 steps of the first retrospective? What would that be?
So it's a brand new retrospective with a new team, perhaps, or a team that hasn't retrospected it before. To be honest, I'd either ask the team what kind of style they fancy doing and just allow them to choose, or I'd start with something quite simple, quite generic that might apply to the majority of people. A good fun one I have found is one I created called Taco Tuesday, right? Because a lot of people like tacos. Food's a topic we can all get on board with. And the icebreaker in that is you literally get people building little miniature tacos based on their favorite, to their taste. You might have someone who just overloads it with cheese and jalapenos, and that's for them. And some people really like meats. And so it's a good way to break the ice, but also get people interacting with the board. So setting the expectation that it's going to be a participative session. For me, set the context very clearly at the beginning, and the best way I found to do this, and it's built into all of my templates, is the Retro Prime Directive by Norm Kurth. It's a few sentences which, for me, set the context of a retro for unconditional positive regard. Right, so it emphasizes the fact that the team are there together today, not to blame anyone. It's that we, regardless of what we discover today, we understand and truly believe that everyone has done the best job they could with the information available to the time, their skill sets, the situation at hand. For me, it's a great way to remind people why we're here. We don't care about what's happened and why it happened. We just want to know what we can do differently and what we can improve upon.
Mm-hmm.
I then allow, using these templates, people to interact in the way they prefer to interact. So some people are more vocal and they prefer to speak out loud. Some people prefer to do so anonymously, and the psychological safety might not quite be there yet for them to speak out. And you also will have situations where someone can dominate the discussion. So when I introduce a topic, and as I mentioned, if I was doing the Queen Retro with you today, I might say, right, the first one we're going to do is Under Pressure. And I would play Under Pressure, the song, and I would invite silent reflection. I would say to the team, just for a few minutes, three or so minutes, just note down on Post-it notes on this board the things that are making you feel under pressure, the things that are causing you unnecessary stress as a team. They spend that time, and then I would empower them to dot vote collectively as a group, and I'd use probably a Queen-themed visual. So I might get miniature Freddie Mercury's and get them to vote like that rather than boring dots. And that would allow the team to emphasize the thing that they most think needs improvement upon. The reason for this is that a team could identify 20 things in a retrospective, but they can't probably do 20 things between now and then because they've also got work to do. So I want them to focus on the things that are going to most deliver value to them. So they've had a prompt, what's putting them under pressure. They've silently reflected. They may have dot voted and discussed the one that's most important to them, and then I invite them to pull an action out of that. So something, an action or experiment they can try differently in the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move on to the next prompt. And I try and keep the retro 45 minutes to an hour, no more. The reason for that is, we're virtual. People can become disconnected. Our attention spans are probably limited to 20 to 40 minutes anyway. So having a shorter, sharper, focused retro where everyone's engaged and feels part of it, rather than starts to switch off and disconnect, I have found to have resulted in a better outcome. And I'm often quoting, when it comes to retros, a little less conversation, a little more action. A retro is pointless. This is coming back to Elvis, right? The retro is pointless if we haven't identified something different to try next. If we don't identify something different to try next, odds are the team are going to be frustrated with the same things in the next 2 weeks anyway. So a little less conversation, a little more action. What actions can we try differently? And ideally, those actions have got owners to them. So we know who's going to work on them. They are pulled onto the backlog, so they're very transparent and not forgotten about. And then they can be reflected upon next time they do a retro.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the last thing I've increasingly been doing is trying to retro the retro itself. So building in a feedback loop to identify whether the retro is adding value. So again, I will invite the team to rate on a fist of 5. Has this retro been good or bad? With a 1 being, some people were there, maybe not everyone participated, maybe we didn't identify actions with owners, all the way to a 5 where everyone felt they were safe to speak out comfortably. There were actions identified with owners, the time box was respected, that sort of thing. And if it's like a 3 or a 4, you could then say, okay, so what could we try differently to make the retro better next time? So we're building in a feedback loop to make sure the retro itself is adding value.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. If you were mentioning several times the virtual retro for you is 45 to 60 minutes. How long could or should or usually is an in-presence retro?
How long is a piece of string, right? It depends on the situation. It depends on the size of the team. It depends on the time frame that you're retroing. It could be you're doing a retro that was based on a project that was 6 months and you're trying to get everything down as much as possible to learn. I would probably say they've allowed too long a gap between retroing, personally, if that had happened. But it's entirely contextual to the situation. In person, I've seen hours-long retro, but I always towards the shorter, sharper ones.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. And you were also putting there a lot of comments about how inclusion in the virtual space should be guaranteed or fostered from a facilitated perspective, but also from a design perspective. That's really important also to me personally. Great aspects. Chris, may I ask you one last thing? So you were saying when we commit on action that goes to the backlog, it should be as transparent as possible. I heard last time in a session that I had with a participant, we were saying that it was very valuable if the person who is committed to an action, not just the name is put there, but the person him herself really speaks up, speaks it out, so they're even more committed if they have to speak it out loud, like speaking out loud or working out loud. Is there anything else that should be considered when we talk about working on the follow up?
So work on the follow up. So for me, yeah, again, it's so important that it remains transparent. So depending on the situation, a thing I've recommended is if there maybe is a team that's struggling to follow up on action items, you can add a question to the stand up every day, just saying, how are we getting on with our retro actions, right? What have I done to move us forward or to improve upon recently? So you can definitely build that in. I think, as you said, speaking out loud, vocalizing something can help with creating a sense of ownership. Completely agree with that. Ensuring that the product owner prioritizes those retro actions alongside other things, because the challenge that I have observed is that yes, it goes in the backlog, but then it's a lot of teams end up so focused on feature, new stuff, they don't feel they have the empowerment to focus on the improvement stuff. And it's this situation where, and sometimes this goes even so far as a team saying, "Oh, we don't have time to retro at all." There's the challenge. So they feel they're so busy to retro. So the question I ask in that situation, look, are you happy with how things are? Often the answer is no. Okay, so if you're not happy with how things are and you're not doing anything differently to change that, do you think you're going to remain unhappy with how things are? Imperfect action is better than no action. And doing the same things over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So when teams are exhibiting this behavior, I love to pull out those quotes. It's very powerful to remind them that if they're unhappy with their current reality, they have to change something. And the other thing I often refer to is doing nothing is in itself a decision. So if you are aware of challenges, frustrations as a team that are stopping you from being as successful as you can be, and you're not taking any action upon them, you're doing nothing about it, that is your decision. You have decided that. And therefore, you're accepting that you will remain frustrated with that situation. But if you aren't happy with it and you want to do something differently, you've got to change something. There's got to be a variable. There's got to be a new experiment you've got to try. Otherwise, you will remain frustrated with that situation. So doing nothing is a decision.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris, for elaborating on that. And I love it. Imperfect action is better than no action, because I also have a feeling in some teams that I'm working with that sometimes we're so focused on perfection on whatever we're talking about that I know that I'm starting to get nervous, because it's like I can't discuss about that bullet point there in this particular slide or whatever we're talking about, whether there is a bullet point or not. I'll pick up on the last question now, Benjamin. Thank you so much for sharing. And the question is, regarding the retros, how large would you say is a good team size? Is there a minimum in your opinion?
So I've always subscribed to the 7 plus or minus 2 number. So 7 people plus or minus 2 would mean anything between 5 and 9. The other number I often hear is the size of the team should correspond with the 2 pizza rule. So a team should be able to be fed by 2 pizzas. Now, obviously, that's again contextual. It depends on how much pizza a certain person eats, but that tends to be the kind of numbers I go for. I think there's a great visual out there. I can't remember what you'd have to search to see it, but it shows the connection lines between people as the number of people scales. So if you've just got a triangle, there's 3 people, the connection lines are just something like that. But then when it's 4, then they've kind of, it crisscrosses, and then it becomes 5 and 6 and everything. And then you get to like 13, 14, and the lines are all over here, there, and everywhere. And that's a lot of cognitive load on the team. It can cause, when you've got a 10 plus people team, it can cause every meeting to take that much longer, which means there's a lot of time sunk into meetings that may not be adding value. So I've always found the 7 plus or minus 2 to be a good golden number to aim for.
Thank you very much, Chris. And with that, I also created for me, so to not forget it, the final banner here, because I love that. I didn't only love the Queen themed template that I'm definitely going to check out, but also imperfection and better is it's better than no action. Dear God,
No action,
changing
not
it
you.
immediately.
Yeah, no action.
That is when you type in the background. Here we go. Imperfection is better than dear God again.
Close. Almost
Close.
there.
We go there. We go there. We are
Third
here.
time lucky. Third time lucky.
Yay. Here we go.
There we
Imperfection is
go.
better than no action. No action is a choice. And with that, Chris, thank you so much again for coming here, sharing your expertise. And to everybody out there, definitely go to the Virtual Agile Coach co.uk. Check out the templates Chris has, and I personally would recommend you connect with Chris or follow him on LinkedIn to see also what he's posting about. I do know that you accept challenges, Chris, in terms of what templates to build, right?
I do indeed. I've got a very long backlog now. There's everything on there from International Bat Appreciation Day, thank you Tobias Mayer, all the way to Stranger Things and Breaking Bad. So the weirder and more wonderful, the better. I love the challenge, and I tend to release a new retro every week. So this year I'm planning to release at least 52. And I think last week I just released my 50th retro template. So there's loads out there, guys. Give them a go.
Mamma mia. Amazing. Thank you very much, Chris, again. It was a tremendous pleasure having you here. I prepared a virtual cocktail backstage, and I'm joining you in a minute, okay?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you very much, Virtual Space Hero community. It was a tremendous, interesting conversation. You've seen so many possibilities there on how to create a virtual environment for your virtual or your hybrid team. I think it was really, very intriguing. And I definitely check out the Queen template, as you can imagine. And I hope to use that very, very soon. So with that, I'm wishing you a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening, whatever time it is where you are based and located currently. And I hope to see you next week on the Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live. Don't forget that we're streaming to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. So if you want to check out our YouTube channel and you have all the past LinkedIns there, you might have missed one. And I guarantee checking it out, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and you will see interesting new posts popping up in your feed. So with that, thank you very much for joining, and see you next week. Become a Virtual Space Hero.